There we go.
Welcome to the Veterans in Politics International Candidate Forum. I'm Natalie Winslow, the moderator. We'd like to thank our sponsors today, Ron Q for Clark County Treasurer, Michael Broadway Real Estate, Real Water, and Lakeside Business Suites. May I have the panelists introduce themselves?
Robert Foust, US Army VIP member.
George Chehade VIP member, Internet Sales and Consulting.
Lena Ocasio, Air Force veteran, real estate broker in town.
Troy Warren, VIP member.
Bletnitsky, Coast Guard veteran and technology consultant.
Thank you. Can I have the candidate introduce himself and give us a 2-minute bio?
Sure, my name is Mike Thomas. I retired after 31 years as a police officer, both in California and Nevada. My last 13, I was with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and then my last 13 years were with Clark County School District Police Department. I was injured on the job. I had to have my left foot rebuilt. In 2011, I ended up with 9 screws and 3 brackets. And it looks like a Home Depot ad when I show people the picture, and I'm just thankful I don't walk with a limp. And honestly, I'm still fighting the school district on workers' comp. I just had a hearing this month, and the next hearing is going to be, I think, next month. But I've lived in Las Vegas since 1993. I've been married for 32 years. I have 2 daughters. One goes to UNLV, one goes to West Career Technical Academy. 2 dogs, a cat, and I'm the only male in the household, so I get overruled on everything. So that's really about it. I decided to run for the Clark County School District because I know the players. I've been involved in the budgets and negotiations, and the state of affairs right now is horrendous. You just have to follow the what's going on in the news. And you'll see the Clark County School District, I mean, $60 million, really closer to $80 million in a deficit. That's nothing to hold your head up proudly. And then I saw a headline that really made me do a double take. They said that the Clark County School District was 51st out of 50 states in education. So I was like, that must be new math. But unless they're counting Puerto Rico. But so that's why I decided there needed to be some change and some fiscal accountability.
Thank you. We're going to go into our first question.
Yes.
Bletnitsky, US Coast Guard veteran. Clark County School District not only is 51st in education, they're also toward the top in the country in expulsions and suspensions and disciplinary matters.
Sure.
And oftentimes the school employees take it upon themselves, instead of turning things over to the school police who are trained to investigate crimes, they decide they're going to handle it administratively so that they don't have to follow basic rules of evidence and basic due process. And then whatever they decide, if it's a suspension, you can't even appeal above the school's principal. So you have untrained people making decisions that affect the futures of kids. What do you think needs to be done to improve education? And 2, what can be done to curtail the lack of due process within the school district?
Well, that was a pretty complex question. I would say that I certainly agree that there are certain things that should and could be handled administratively. You're absolutely right that if there's a crime that's been committed, an actual offense, sure, there is a chain of custody. There's all kinds of things that come into play. Deprivation of rights. The problem is we have laws that were written for juveniles back in the 60s. When most of these things were considered delinquent acts. We have bullying. Everybody wants to have a policy on bullying, but the problem with bullying is it's got no teeth to it. The first offense on the books for bullying is nothing. It's basically, well, let's sit down and talk about it. I think what you need to do is you need to look at actual laws that are being violated and then see if those laws are applicable. If somebody is being harassed and it's so pervasive that they don't want to come to school, and that they're scared to go to school, or they're being cyberbullied, then you look at harassment, you look at stalking laws, and those are actually criminal offenses that it's taken out of the hands of the administrators at the school, and then the school police or even Metro can get involved, and because a lot of these things are occurring outside of the home as well. And I think then you have some actual laws with some teeth in it that you can do something about. I think too many administrators try to handle things in-house because from my own personal experience, they don't want any school to know that there's too many drug arrests, there's too many weapons violations, because they don't want to be considered an at-risk school. Particularly of the schools in the nicer areas in Summerlin, like Palo Verde. And they don't want people knowing, oh, there was a weapon found in our school. And in fact, it used to irk me like you wouldn't believe when the spokesperson for the school police would show up when a boy was found with a gun in his backpack and say, he walked around with a gun in his backpack all day long, but nobody was ever in any danger because he had no intention of using it at school. Well, how do you know? How could you possibly know? So I think that there's too many outside influences where administrators, because they run the school, and the school district dictate to the school police, and I think it should be turned around. You did good, Troy.
Troy Warren, VIP member. Thanks for showing up today.
Oh, thank you.
I want to get to budget. Now, I'm a native. I graduated the school district. Both of my girls are graduates of the school district. I mean, I have a ton of family here. One of the things that drives me crazy going through high school with my girls again is the lack of funding for everything. They are tens of $millions in debt, and they're worried about transgender bathrooms. So, one, would you support a complete, because it's been battled, a complete audit of the school district? And would you be willing to cut the costs in the administrators because they're so top heavy?
Absolutely. One of the things that I've pushed for, and one of the things that I would absolutely want, is a forensic audit, not just an audit. I want to account for every dollar, every dime. The school district is so top heavy that they create administrative positions. And one of the things that bothered me that I read, that they spent over $18 million last year on consultants. Now, who are these consultants? These are supposed to be subject matter experts. When you don't know something, you bring somebody in to help you to do your job better or budget better or whatnot. These consultants were all retired administrators from the Clark County School District. Number one, I can't believe those are the best people you could find to do that. Number two, they're already getting a pension. You're going to bring them, hire them back as a consultant and spend $18 million. They didn't get the job done when they were working for the school district. So now you're going to bring them back and ask for something to be different. It's ridiculous. The school district is absolutely top heavy. I think that the thing that was supposed to change was when they break up the school district, which the current board is resistant to. I think you need to look at and examine how many administrators are there. I mean, they got a legal department right now that has over 10, 11 lawyers that are on staff, all make six figures. Each one of them has maybe one or two assistants, but yet every time there's a lawsuit, every time something goes on in bargaining, they hire an outside law firm. They spent over $3 million on an outside firm last year, and their budget was 450 times over what is allocated for their budget. So I think there's some misplaced priorities, and that needs to be looked at. Thank you for the question.
Hi, I'm a single mom. I have two little ones, a 3-year-old, a 7-year-old, and I actually have them in private school at the moment because I don't want them going to a CCSD school. I actually attended a CCSD school through 8th grade and in high school, but things have definitely changed from them. One of the biggest changes is implementing Common Core curriculum here in Clark County. And do you support Common Core? And if you don't, how the heck can we get rid of it?
Actually, I think the current school board and Northern Nevada, I just read 2 days ago in the paper, they're abandoning Common Core. That was something that was pushed under the Bush administration, and the problem was too many teachers, not through choices of their own, but they were teaching to the test. They weren't teaching the subject. So kids weren't learning basically math or English, they were learning how to take a test, and that's a problem. As it is now, my one daughter goes to West Career Tech, and this poor kid, number one, I can't help her with her homework. I see what she does and what she looks at, and I'm like, I got nothing. I can't help you. And she's usually up until 3, sometimes 4 in the morning doing homework, and then I wake her up at 5:30 to get her to school. And that is so much pressure on a child, and I think that when you have a situation like Common Core, and I'm glad they're getting rid of it, because they need to teach subjects, they don't need to teach test taking.
George Chehade VIP member. Thank you for being here today, Mike. Want to ask
Thank you
you
for having me.
your thoughts on how to keep our schools safer. Are you a supporter of teachers carrying guns?
You know, that's a real complex question. I'm going to throw this out there because people are very opinionated one way or the other. I've been to too many schools where teachers have left their purses out and had things stolen, where they don't lock their desk and things are taken. But I'm also a big believer that the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And that doesn't happen by accident. So my compromise, to begin with, and it can always be altered, is there's laws on the books right now that allow for an administrator at the school, the principal, to decide who can come onto that campus with a firearm. So what I'd like to see is, and I've seen this, they have gun safes that can be opened up with an RFID bracelet, or you can put your palm down and it opens within a millisecond, the gun safe, so they have access to a gun. What I'd like to see is a gun safe in classrooms for teachers and staff members who pass a background check, are qualified, and receive training from the police department, knowing that the police are going to respond, and have a gun safe in the classroom, bolted to the floor, that nobody can mess with, that way a teacher or staff member is not walking around the school with a gun on their hip, because there's very few safety or what I call triple retention holsters that work with civilian attire. It's just the manufacturers don't make too many of them. So, but what I'd like to see is when a school goes into a lockdown or a shelter in place because somebody is walking around the school killing people or shooting, I'd like a teacher or a staff member in that classroom with those students to have access to a gun as a last resort. Meaning that if somebody's trying to breach that door, if somebody's trying to get inside to cause harm to those students or some other staff members, they have the ability to return fire and kill that person. I don't mean take their gun and let's wander through the halls looking for the shooter. You stay with the kids, because if you're wandering through the halls with a firearm, that's a good way to get shot by the police to show up. So that's my idea, is if they want to be able to carry the firearm, let them have access to the firearm, not carrying it to school. And also, teachers and staff members respond to school fights in the cafeteria and whatnot, and I would hate for a gun to fall out of a holster, and now you've got another problem.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Safe, great answer.
Robert Foust, US Army VIP member. So where are you with the sports programs at the state level? Not private schools, but the state level, state-sponsored sports programs, high school, college, 2-year school. If somebody came up with an amendment to defund that, to save money for education, would you go for it?
Education's first. I'm sorry, but education's first. Sports programs, those are nice, but that's not a priority. The priority is education. I think there's money to be found. There's money that can be cut from other places. I think that if you're thinking about funding sports first, it shouldn't be a priority. Sports are great, but then how do you pick and choose which sport and this and that? So education first, in my mind at least, sports is second. And there's funding there, you just gotta find it.
So along those same lines, so there's been a lot going on, and it really drove me crazy with the school district and actually the education in this country as a whole, to prep the kids for college. Not every kid's college bound.
Right.
Okay, I went to tech school. I have an amazing life and have made a lot of money being a mechanic. I know we have some specialty schools around. However, what's your thoughts on bringing automotive shop, architecture, home ec You know, I got asked this question when I ran for office, like,
Sure.
what do you mean home ec? I'm like, are you kidding me? Chefs are rock stars right now.
Right, especially in this town.
Absolutely. And those kind of things back into the high schools, because not every kid can afford or get into or get travel to these specialty schools.
You're right, you're right, I absolutely agree. I think that should be a priority. I think that there are kids, as you say, that go to school and they don't know what they want to do, but they like to tinker around with cars. I'd like to see apprenticeship programs for carpentry, for things like that. I think that there should be alternative schools, and when I say alternative schools, I mean a trade or a technical school. Let somebody learn a trade. For crying out loud, let them learn a trade. I mean, we've got too many kids dropping out because they can't figure out the trigonometry or the algebra or the things like that nature, but they're good with their hands. And they know they want to do something along those lines. So I would like to see more technical trade schools. I'd like to see apprenticeship programs being invited into the school district. Yeah.
How do you see addressing, there's a lot of talk that teachers don't get paid enough, and there's budget problems, yet, you look at the salaries, and like at Palo Verde High School where you mentioned, the principal makes $187,000 a year. And, which is pretty darn good. And, and that's one of those schools where they don't report things to the police because they don't want the stats. So they handle things, in totally inappropriate ways, illegal ways, and no one is held account, no one is punished. So, yet there are teachers that are really good that should get paid more, and there's teachers that are really poor that should be fired. Yet the union doesn't allow that. So how do you see addressing those issues?
Well, I think what you need to do is you need to set some standards. I absolutely agree with you. Palo Verde, I know well. That was one of the schools that I patrolled. When I was there was two officers that were there, Sean Vanier and Ron Perkowski, and they had a giant whiteboard that they put up at Palo Verde, and they would say drug arrests, guns, knives confiscated, and they broke it down, and the principal came in and had a fit. Wiped it all out. They said, what are you doing? They said, we don't want those stats up here. We don't want our parents coming in and thinking this school is not safe. So again, it's skewed priorities. The boy that was killed a couple years ago at Palo Verde, Chris Privet, he was killed walking home from Palo Verde, and he was killed by a boy that had a handgun that was kicked out of Western High School for a firearms violation. The school district has this policy that the general public, I would venture to guess, doesn't even know about. What they do if a boy is found with a firearm out of school, they take that boy, they put him out of school. Well, I say boy, but it could be a girl. They take that person, that student, they put him out of school. They send him to opportunity school for 6 to 16 weeks. And then at the end of that, they open up a map of the school district and they say, okay, because you had a weapons violation, guess what? You don't get to go back to your school, but you can pick any other school you want, and we will provide transportation.
Seriously?
What?
Seriously, absolutely, and that's how that boy ended up at Palo Verde. All the burglaries in the area that we were responding to at Palo Verde and Metro was responding to, that's because these kids from inner cities were getting off the school bus, going into the neighborhoods, and committing burglaries. I mean, they went from being a little fish in a big pond to being a big fish, and now they're walking around in a school in Summerlin going, hey, what kind of shoes are those? Michael Jordans? Give me your shoes. Give me your iPod. Give me your phone. And these kids don't know how to react. And the school district was providing transportation to them to go to these areas. It was crazy.
Lena Ocasio.
Yes, I recognize them.
So we have a problem with most Americans, and even here in Las Vegas, people being financially illiterate. They know nothing about stocks, they know nothing about bonds, they don't even know what a mortgage is. And obviously that's something that needs to be taught in the schools. So would you support like a financial literacy class in our high schools? And if so, what would you do? How would you go about, getting that approved so that it is a mandatory class, just like PE is mandatory for 2 years, which sorry, if you wanna be lazy, then you're gonna be lazy.
Right.
Having a mandatory PE class isn't gonna help you.
Right. No, I absolutely agree. I call those living skills. And I was amazed because I would go to a school and I would write maybe a truancy citation, or I'd write a ticket, and I'd say to the student, either in high school or middle school, I'd say, go ahead and sign your name. And they'd look at me like I wasn't speaking English. I said, yeah, go ahead and sign your name. They didn't know how to write in cursive. They'd never been taught to write in cursive. So what I quickly found out I was kind of wasting my time giving them lectures and telling them things. So while I'm sitting there filling out what's called a truancy citation or a habitual truancy citation, they would just sit there and stare at me. So before I'd get to the school, I'd stop at McDonald's or Taco Bell and I'd pick up job applications. And I'd give them the job application to fill out. And they'd say, what's that? I said, well, you know, you're not coming to school, so if you're not gonna come to school, then you're gonna end up someplace working at McDonald's or Taco Bell or Burger King. And that's great, I have no problem with those places because I like to go to those places on occasion. So why don't you practice filling out the application? And they would get really offended. And they'd say, no, I can do better. I say, get better, you missed 27 days of school this semester. How can you do better? And I would make it a challenge to them to throw it out there and say, no, this is what you need to do, and you know, fill these things out. And if you can do better, I hope you do better. But we absolutely need to teach living skills to these kids because they don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to. Everything's digital. I mean. If I have a problem with my phone, I give it to my 16-year-old. I was giving it to her when she was 12, and she would solve my problems with my phone. You know, not me. But at the same time, these kids who spend so much time in the digital age doing things and you know, instantaneously on the internet, they don't know how to, like I said, to sign their, you know, write in cursive or tell time. I heard they're getting rid of analog clocks in England. You know, you can't tell them time on a clock. Come on. These are simple things that everybody should know.
Thank you, that's all the time we have for questions today.
Thank you.
We're gonna ask the candidate to give us you have 2 minutes to ask the panel for their endorsement.
Thank you. I appreciate. Thank you for having me. And I don't know if you can tell, I love answering questions. I really do. I enjoy meeting with people. I enjoy answering questions. I guess that comes from working in an environment where I was around kids. And one thing that I would really like is the endorsement from your organization. Veterans are a special kind of people. I know that veterans, my experience with the veterans, because a lot of police officers are ex-military, ex-veterans, and they're great. You give them a mission, you give them a goal, they will figure it out, because that's what veterans do. And I you know, it saddens me that I think the last statistic was maybe 22 veterans a day are committing suicide. I think when they get out of the military, there's this lack of belonging, this brotherhood, this core camaraderie that they don't have. And along the lines of you know, safeguarding the schools, I would love to have volunteers from veterans and military if they pass a background check and they're capable and able to carry a gun. I'd like to see them on campuses. You know, a lot of them are grandfathers and fathers and parents of kids in the school system, and I think that's an untapped resource that we should be able to use and utilize. So, you know, again, I would love your endorsement. If I don't get your endorsement, I'm okay with that. It's not going to change what I do and how I am, but there does need to be some change. And it's groups like yours that bring these issues to the forefront. So, thank you again.
Thank you to our candidate, thank you to our panelists, and thank you to our sponsors, Ron Q for Clark County Treasurer, Michael Broadway Real Estate, Real Water, and Lakeside Business Week.